Today we're getting our VO2 Max measured in a lab for the first time. No more Garmin estimates, no more online calculator guesswork. Since we are currently in a sub 3 hour marathon attempt training block, we're gonna get a peek into my physiology, see how good at running I actually am, and if it's even possible for me to run a sub 3 hour marathon right now. So quickly before we go over to the lab, I'm just gonna give a brief overview of what VO2 Max is and what it isn't based on a lot of stuff constantly said on the internet. So first, what is VO2 Max? If you've been running for any sort of time, you've probably heard this term a bunch, but just as a broad overview, VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen that your body can utilize during exercise. If you were to think of your body as a car, VO2 max would be the size of the engine. It's measured in this, which is milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute. I know it's a mouthful, but we'll circle back to it later. So the more oxygen that your body is able to utilize, the more energy it's able to produce, which in turn gives you the potential for running faster. And notice I said potential for running faster, which brings us to our second point of what VO2 max actually isn't and what it shouldn't really be used for. Well, first of all, VO2 max isn't the end-all be-all measurement of your fitness. And while there is a genetic component to VO2 max, it can actually be trained. VO2 max can actually better be seen as a snapshot into your total fitness now, rather than a ceiling to what your potential fitness could be. So if you do a test like this, or if you're going off of your Garmin or Coros or a Suunto watch, and it gives you a number for your VO2 max and it's not as high as you'd like it to be, don't get discouraged, because not only are these things not very accurate, but it's just where you're at right now. Spoiler alert, I think mine might be very wrong, but we're gonna find that out today. So that'll be a cool little test. So how does the lab test actually work? Well, I am running very late, so we will talk about that with a voice over me because I really need to go. I have like an hour and 15-minute drive to get there. I will see you over there. I have always thought of DC as just such a cool city, but now living close to it, anytime I have to drive through it or into it, it is terrible. Oh God, where am I? I am running very late. Oh, this is not ideal. Okay, so sorry there will be no fancy B-roll or anything of me walking into the building, because I got a little lost, I left a little late, and I'm in a rush. So I'll see you inside for the VO2 max test. Cue the voiceover.
Well, I only ended up being sort of late, so everything worked out. First off, I just want to give Coach Bobby over at Integrative Performance in Arlington, Virginia, a huge shout out. He's the dude with the massive arms right here. You can see giving me a rundown of the test and getting me set up with the mask. We actually ended up running out of time for him to give me the breakdown of the results while I was there, but he very graciously agreed to do a video call the next day, give me the rundown, and answer any questions that I had. So we'll get right into that after we go through the test with all of you. As you see here, I get hooked up to a mask, which is able to measure my breathing rate, my oxygen in versus oxygen out, as well as my CO2 production. There's a couple of different versions or protocols for the test itself, but the one we're doing is gradually speeding up the treadmill every minute until I can no longer sustain the pace. Some tests do every 3 minutes, some are on a bike, different structures for the same test. Because the machine is measuring my respiration, ideally we'll be able to see at what point my breathing is becoming the limiting factor in my running, so let's hit this. Normally, the test starts at around 3 miles an hour to get warmed up, and then goes up by 0.5 miles per hour every minute. But because Coach Bobby knows that I'm an ultra runner and I have a really big fitness base and likely a decent VO2 max, we started at 3.6 miles per hour and went up 0.6 every minute just to keep the test a reasonable length. That was fun and all, but I will spare you having to watch me struggle to breathe and hold the conversation, and we'll get straight into the results the next day with Coach Bobby.
Hey, how's it going? I appreciate you taking the time to hop on here with me.
So I'll kind of start going over it from the top. Did you have any specific questions?
I'm sure we'll get to it, but my max heart rate seems really low. Is that common for this kind of thing?
Yeah, I was surprised by that. No, it's not too common. We've had people with lower heart rate, but it's more the outlier than the commonality, especially for 11 miles per hour. I mean, you're looking, but at the same time, you also looked for the exertion level like relatively composed. I can like argue it either way, but yeah, generally speaking, I'll say out of like 20 tests, maybe one person or two is a little like lower than expected. First page is a summary page, but where I really provide a lot of my guidance is off of the actual graphs. But congrats, VO2 max of 58.2 at 11 miles per hour. What did you say your watch estimate of 53 or 55?
Yeah, it's been stuck at 53 for a long time. It even dropped to 52 the day before this test, and then it came back to 53.
Again, this is a summary page. This part is a little algorithmic. That's why like the graphs are just the actual raw data. So overall, for age group, this is based on age, height, gender. Very good. I mean, great. It's still crazy hearing your story. And, I know people have been training for quite a while who have not gotten that high, but that's great. First thing we're looking at here is your heart rate in red, your VO2 in blue. So right about just after that 9 mile per hour, 9.2 mile per hour mark, first, plus or minus a fraction, that's definitely when your body started shifting a little bit more into high gear. And then interestingly, this is the part that I was saying, like you're going all the way up to the very top. Even we're continuing to even oxygenate more a moment past we stop. So typically at the top end here, this usually starts going up and kind of flattening or plateauing, and towards the end it's kind of like up and down, up and down. But sometimes when we see it still continue to go up, there's a chance that, do you feel like you gave it your max exertion?
I do, but I also feel like because I've really only done a couple of strides in the past week, that my body, like neuromuscularly, isn't as tuned to be doing really fast stuff. And then if I were to do a couple weeks of that and like have more efficient form again, back to where I was last year, because the last time I did speed work was probably like last May or June. If I was like a little bit more tuned with that in terms of like a running efficiency standpoint, that maybe I could have kept going.
That makes sense to me. I've done a lot of these and every body is different, and you certainly were exerting and did a great job. But even for you, you didn't look, let's say, as like completely gassed as another person who would at 11 miles per hour. And kind of matching up with what you said, where I think physiologically you have a higher capacity. It's just getting that conditioning up to it with a little bit of training in like a few weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if it like jumped up a little bit more. Most people's VO2 doesn't continue to rise until like the very last moment. So for you, you might be one of the people that might see a little bit more of a jump just with a little bit of like specific conditioning.
So there's a lot to think about with these VO2 max test results. Coach Bobby and I talked for like another 45 minutes, so I'm just gonna give you the TLDR version of it all. Basically, I have the aerobic capacity to run a sub-3 hour marathon, which is really assuring, but the bottleneck for me lies in my neuromuscular conditioning. My muscles, my tendons, my respiration, none of those are really primed yet to be able to run a sub-3 hour marathon. The good news is this is all very trainable in the amount of time that we have left in this training block. The bad news, at least in my head, is that barring some sort of uncontrollable catastrophe, if I don't do this, it is literally just my fault for quitting on myself. So there's no excuses. Another really important aspect of my fitness that we talked about was my respiration, or, my breathing. So at my peak tidal volume, which is just a measurement of how deeply I was breathing, it was actually lower at the end of the test than in the middle. Now, having more shallow breathing is a pretty normal stress response, but if I can work on that conditioning, then it could result anywhere between a 6 to 7.5% in my total respiration, which will directly impact my VO2 max. More oxygen, more energy production. So what's the take-home information for all of you from all of this? VO2 max, just as a number, doesn't really matter. What doing a test like this or using the number on your smartwatch really does is it just makes you more informed about your training. Remember what I told you earlier about VO2 max being measured as milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute? Well, if you were to lose 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds, then technically your VO2 max would go up if everything else was equal. But Nothing exists in a vacuum with fitness. If you end up losing a couple pounds because you're underfed and you can no longer generate as much power while you're running, then you're not really doing yourself any favors. So that's just something I want everyone to keep in mind, that yes, over time, it's good to see your VO2 max increase, but don't let that number be the thing that your satisfaction around your training lives and dies by. Use it as a tool to keep you more informed, but just focus on getting more fit in a general sense. At the end of the day, we all run because we love some aspect of it, whether it's the feeling of freedom or seeing ourselves get faster over time, or just getting outside and getting away from our screens. Don't lose sight of the fun part just because Strava or Garmin tells you you're unproductive or detraining for a short amount of time. Only you have the full picture of your fitness and your intentions and everything that's going on in your life. So don't forget to have fun. I'll see you next time.